Hey everybody, welcome back to the Badgerland Birding Podcast, bringing you birding news and stories from the Badger State and beyond. Today we're with Sparky Stensaas. He is the Sax-Zim Bog Whisperer, and he also has his own YouTube channel where he talks about birds and photography as well. So we're super excited to have you with us. How's it going, Sparky?
Awesome, guys. Thank you for having me. I watch not every single one of your videos, but most of them. And I've been
Appreciate
catching up
that.
on the podcasts.
A
So,
lot to get through.
That's true. You would
yeah,
be watching 500 or more videos if you did watch
uh,
everyone, which would
yeah.
be an impressive life statement, but I don't know if I don't know if you have the time to do that.
Do I
Notice
see that Ryan is wearing a Minnesota Vikings sweatshirt?
I dressed for the occasion, so we're talking Saxon Bog today. Are you a big Vikings guy?
Well, my 16-year-old is, and my 14-year-old is kind of. So I am now thrown back into the emotional roller coaster of watching football.
Hmm.
Yes, as a kid, I was a incredible Vikings fan, but I escaped that for many years. But now I'm thrown back into it.
It drags you back in. I mean, they're
Oh
having a
yeah,
good season, so maybe they can do well this year, but we'll see. We know what the Vikings like to do, which is not win in the playoffs. But right
yes,
away, we noticed that you have that snowy backdrop going on. So perfect for talking about the bog today for sure.
yeah, and I just hope we have a little more wintry winter than last winter.
So it didn't snow a lot last year. Did that impact the species at the bog? Was stuff more dispersed then? Were things harder to find?
Uh, you know, uh, my pat answer is it really doesn't matter how much snow or how cold it is. It's for these boreal birds, it's all about food and what the cone crop or the vole population is further north. That's kind of determine what's going to come south to the upper Midwest, Western Great Lakes, Sax-Zim Bog. But it did affect certain birds, like rough-legged hawks, maybe stuck around a little longer because they could hunt without 2 feet of snow on the ground. But in general, it's more about food than snow depth. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Is it the
Um,
photographers mostly that like that snow then for that backdrop?
Yes, photographers. That's one of the first questions they ask is there snow or snowing on the forecast or snow on the ground? So yes, that is a big part of it.
I feel like it's complicated because you want the snow for the atmosphere because we've been to the bog one time and it just felt natural that there was snow or it was snowing, but it is kind of complicated because that's what really makes you need four-wheel drive too. So if you're going to go up there, you definitely have some things to think about in terms of planning and weather, and it's kind of a double-edged sword, all that snow.
Yeah, the big thing is I tell people just drive down the middle of the road. People aren't used to driving in the middle of the road, but it's mostly dirt roads, and I'm talking about the dirt side roads here. But stay away from the ditches. Don't pull over too far, and because they wing plow the snow, so it looks like it might be flat going out from the edge of the road, but it just falls away into a ditch, and that's
mm,
how most people get stuck. I would say on average in a typical winter, 2, 3 people get stuck in the ditch every single day. So
Oh,
we we list the tow 3 different towing companies on our website on the birding map because that is a big thing. And we encourage people just keep an eye on your rearview mirror too. If somebody's coming up behind you, move over. A snowplow, even just move over and stop. Let them go by. They're maybe on their way to school or work or church or who knows what. But um, yeah, the snow is a good thing for most people, but there's some cautionary things you have to take into account for sure.
I thought
yeah,
you were going to say a couple people get stuck per year, and then you're like, yeah,
yeah,
we
that's
get
what I
two to
thought
three
too.
stuck per day. I was like, I'm hoping that the snowplow companies give you some sort of monetary gain for all the business the bog is bringing them.
Some kickbacks.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
So for people unfamiliar, what are the top bog species to see? Obviously, great gray owl is a huge one.
yeah, so Saxon Bog is about uh, 300 square miles. So we're talking a massive area. And people say, "Oh, is one time does the park open?" And as you guys know, it's just a massive area, blank spot on the map that has a lot of good habitat. We own a fraction of it, but we own 25,000 acres of it now. But that's still only a very small part of the bog. And you, um, the main species in this area that people are coming for are boreal species, bog species. And if you guys want to get a good feel, or anybody wants to get a good feel of birding in the bog, how that goes, watch Badgerland Birding's two-part in the bog
Two and a
video.
half part.
Yeah. And
We
then you
did
went
one
for
where we went
boreal.
to Isabella.
Yeah, for boreal chickadee. Yeah. So, and they cleaned up. It was pretty amazing.
That's why we haven't been back. We're like, we can't top that trip.
Yeah, I don't expect to see maybe everything they saw, but yeah, I mean, so some of those, I have the kind of the top 10, which I'm not even sure if it's 10 or 11, but winter birds, gray owl, you mentioned it, hawk owl, boreal owl, not every year, and we're going to talk about that. Snowy owl, not always every year, but usually. Boreal chickadee, of course. Now with all the rib cages and suet feeders out, they're easier to get than ever. Blackback woodpecker and American three-toed woodpecker. American three-toed is, only about every 4 or 5 years they erupt south. White-winged crossbill, evening grosbeak, pine grosbeak, and now we got to say it. I hate to say it, but redpoll.
Doesn't feel good.
No, R.I.P. Hoary redpoll. But I'm still going to look for them and point them out and post them. I don't care how obnoxious that is, but I love hoary redpolls. I guess Canada jay, goshawk, sharp-tailed grouse, although they're declining. Rough-legged hawk. Those would be kind of the most highly desirable species in the winter. Yeah.
I know a bonus for a lot of people seeing the pine martens too. Those are really cool.
We get mammals now with all the feeding stations. There's like 7 or 8 public feeding stations, some run by us, some by local residents. And the Admiral Road feeders have had pine marten now for years. Up to 4 different individuals come in. They love suet and peanut butter and sunflower seeds, and they'll eat a vole if it's under the feeders too. They'll chase a red squirrel who's at the feeders as well. But ermine is another big one these days. Ermine have become much more visible, especially around the Welcome Center feeders, because we put out some rib cages, and we're recycling what the hunters would normally. Either the deer processors would just chuck in a landfill. We're reprocessing those rib cages for the birds, and not only the birds, but ermine, marten, and then all the woodpeckers. Except I shouldn't say all the woodpeckers. Pileated downy hairy blackbacks aren't going to leave. Aren't going to feed on suet from a rib cage. The Canada jays love it. Boreal chickadees love it. So many birds like them. We put them up in the trees so the coyotes or wolves can't fly off with them or can't run off with them. Eagles can't fly off with them. So that's made a big difference over the last few years is just putting out all these rib cages. I've spent the last week trying to procure rib cages locally. And at times I've had to climb into a dumpster full of deer parts with a sawzall to saw them apart. So it ain't pretty, folks, but the birds appreciate it.
Did you ask for a raise after that?
At least a new pair of coveralls.
We'll call it a win.
Yeah.
So Sparky, with it's supposed to be a pretty good year for purple finches as well as siskins. Have you already seen those species moving in, or does it take a little bit of time?
So are you guys seeing those in your area?
So we had one purple finch and 2 pine siskins for like a day, and then they moved on. Okay. But it was supposed to be a good year for at least purple finches.
I think, and this is usually the winter finch forecast is really accurate. I think this year it's maybe not quite as accurate for the Western Great Lakes. Originally it started out as predicting the finches of winter for the New England and Eastern Canada. But man, I was up in the bog yesterday filming a virtually live episode. I had over 150 red poles, and that wasn't even trying. I had over 100 white-winged crossbills. So the main winter finches we're seeing right now are red poles and white-winged crossbills. It's crazy. Every place you stop where there's spruces or alders, there's those species. So we're not seeing a few purple finches. Of course, we get evening grosbeaks every winter, but I had no pine grosbeaks. That's, we've only missed pine grosbeaks once on our Christmas bird count, which is coming up in less than 2 weeks here, ever. And I've been doing compiling the count for, I'm closing in on 40 years. So we've only missed them once. So I saw none yesterday.
Wow.
But hey, when you have that many crossbills and red poles, it softens the blow a bit.
Yeah, you're like, I didn't really notice so much. I had a question about a couple of different species. So how's it looking for Bohemian waxwings up there this year? I know that's a species you can kind of go around the cities and towns and pick some up if there's some ornamental fruit trees. How are they doing so far?
Yeah, and that was where the winter finch forecast said that there was quite a bit of fruit up in Canada. So they may not be making big movements, but historically they move second half of winter. And you guys, I think, were there in mid-February, usually from like late January through mid-March, through late March is when you see waxwings. And I'm guessing they'll, every year we get them, so they'll be building. But you're right, some of those small towns like Grand Marais and Ely and Duluth, Two Harbors, where there's a ton of mountain ash and crabapple, that's where you're going to get the Bohemians. And so I don't know yet. There's been a few reported, but not many. Now, you guys missed Bohemians on that trip, but where did you get your life for Bohemians?
We get them in Wisconsin, so you can drive up to some of the cities in the northern part of the state, and if you just drive around those areas, if they move down, you can get them there. They're always a cool species to see. I mean, all the winter finches and boreal birds are really cool because they're so specialized. You have to go into some place that you probably wouldn't go if not to find them, which is really cool. The other type of bird I wanted to inquire about is the grouse situation, because when we went there, sharp-tailed grouse, it was pretty easy. They were coming to a feeder and they had kind of this field they would go to. We were talking to someone that was just at the bog and they said they saw none. And you said they're declining too. Why are they declining and what's the situation with them? And is there any way to prevent that decline?
Really good question, because I've been birding the bog since 1981 and I don't see really any habitat change. For what they use kind of the farm meadows and fields. But you're right, there's only one lek remaining and it has very few birds. The one you guys in your video is the one on Rochek Road and 229. And Mr. Rochek had the feeders. And the one you have in your video is the upside down garbage can lid feeder. And they were actually coming to it. It was got to be one of the few places in the country where sharp-tails were coming to a bird feeder. But I'd like to say it was a white-faced gyrfalcon that plucked them off one by one, and we all got to enjoy the show. But it was not that Sharp-tailed Grouse Society was just up talking at a conference at the Welcome Center. And, they're kind of mystified too. They think it's more land use change, but I can't really see the changes. One of the old timers up there said farmers used to plant oats, lots of oats. And he said sometimes 100 sharp-tails would fly out of the oat fields, and nobody's growing oats anymore. So maybe it's from that, but I would like to talk to somebody about restocking them, because the DNR manages, you guys probably drove by a lot of these WMAs, wildlife management areas. Those are managed specifically for sharp-tailed grouse. Every one you drove by, Zim, Fermoy, and Sax WMAs are all managed for sharp-tailed grouse. So there's got to be some dialogue started about restocking them, because that's what they're that's what they're managing those lands for, and I haven't heard a peep about it. So
are most of the ones out there like from a stocked population or from a wild population?
No, they were all wild population. So yeah, I nothing looks different to me. And Google, if you look at Google Earth from 30 years ago, there's certainly there was a big push for black spruce logging, but the sharptails don't use the black spruce much, and there's still a lot of farmers up there grazing cattle, and there's a lot of meadows and tamarack swamps, which they like. I don't know. I want to think they'll come back, but I think they might need some help. Now, interestingly, and maybe you heard about this 2 years ago, there were 6 spruce grouse sightings in the bog. And from talking to the locals, there hasn't been spruce grouse up there since the late 60s. So that was very exciting, but every single one of them was a male. And you probably know that you need a female for population. And there were some big forest fires in northern Minnesota a couple of years before that, and people wondered, well, did they kind of get pushed out of that burned up habitat, and this was the next big bog south. But anyway, there were no sightings last winter and none so far this year. So I'm got my fingers crossed. And the guides would love it, right? Because where do they have to go normally for spruce grouse? They have to go up where you guys went for boreal chickadee, up into the Superior National Forest, and that's a long haul even from Duluth. So so that's kind of the grouse situation. And if people don't know, I tell people we have a different cast of characters every winter, right? Different, some years like this year, crossbills are going to be very abundant and pine grosbeaks non-existent. Well, maybe next winter we'll have a lot of pine grosbeaks and only a handful of crossbills and no redpolls. So every winter is different. And that's just a good thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. When you say we, is that the Friends of Sax-Zim organization?
Yeah, that's an organization myself, Kim Eckert, and Dave Benson started in 2011. And we're primarily a land preservation organization. We're buying up land. We've purchased 25,000 acres now, and our mission is to preserve and protect the greater Sax-Zim Bog, and we're doing it for future generations of birds and birders. There was a big push to cut black spruce because black spruce has long fibers and it made good glossy paper stock for especially Sunday morning newspapers. Remember all those ads that would come in the Sunday morning newspaper?
I remember.
Yeah. And well, that market, as we know, the newspaper market's kind of dropped off. So all of a sudden, black spruce is less valuable to the paper mills, less valuable to the loggers, less valuable to the county. So we've been able to kind of work more deals and trade some aspen lands for black spruce. And they want aspen because that's a better paper tree and pulp tree. So it's been good for us, good for birders. We built that welcome center in 2013, and you'll have to come back because it's triple the size now. We've got a little store. We've got an education center with a 110-inch TV to do programming and show videos and conferences and things like that. And it is live as of 3 days ago, a live feeder cam now.
Saw that.
Yeah. It's pretty exciting. The birds really haven't found it yet, but it's going to be really cool when they find it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anybody that's hearing this and they've never been to the bog before, but they're excited by the interesting species we're talking about there, how would you recommend people start with their Sax-Zim Bog trip? What's kind of the infrastructure like for birders? Where should they stay? Kind of the general, like, hey, start here.
Yeah. First of all, there's so many resources. You guys have videos on your visit to Sax-Zim. Other people do. I put out 48 virtually live field trip videos to Sax-Zim in all seasons. Winter is the number one season. 85% of our visitors come in the winter for the reasons we talked about. Those birds are easier to see, and some are only there in the winter. Then I would go to our website, saxzim.org, just saxzim.org, and there's a plan your trip tab. There's lists of guides. If you want to, get a guide for a day and then spend 2 days on your own, that's a great way to do it. I mean, you can certainly bird it on your own. There's so many resources. eBird. Of course, eBird's not going to tell you where the great grays are, but everything else, there on our website, we have this bird and wildlife report we update every week, and I just updated it yesterday. And that'll tell you what's happening. And we give locations. We give locations for great grays, hawk owls, because that's what people are coming for. And those are day hunting owls. People standing around is not going to bother them. And we just, tell the photographers, just, you got to police yourself. You got to, if it looks like you're pushing an owl down the road, just back off, and that's a great resource. And staying in hotels, the nearest ones, there's Alish's accommodations right in the bog. That's the only place to stay in the bog, and it's a great place. It's on the website. But I think you guys stayed at the Days Inn, maybe. They give a birder discount. Did you get the birder discount?
I don't remember. It was so long ago.
Somebody else booked it actually. So I just remember showing up and being like, "Oh, this is our hotel," and they're like, "Yeah."
Yeah, in Duluth, there's several hotels now that get birder discounts. So it's always worth asking. Say, hey, I'm going to the Sax-Zim Bog. Oh, we have a discount for birders.
I'm gonna ask that everywhere I go.
That's a good pro tip, though.
Doctor's office, dentist, McDonald's.
You'll be surprised how often the answer is no.
Yeah, and there now with Airbnb and VRBO, I guess I've never really explored them, but there's some that are closer than Duluth. But a lot of people stay in Duluth, Cloquet, Hibbing, Virginia. And then, rent a car. All-wheel drive is fine. It's dead flat. It's the old glacial lake bed of Glacial Lake Upham. It's dead flat. Of course, if you're in Duluth, it's the opposite of dead flat. But they're really good about plowing. And, you can get around pretty easily. And then the other thing people ask about is clothing. Yes, wear lots of clothing. People are flying in. I said, don't, you're going to have to use your car as a layer of clothing because you're not going to fly in with giant mucklucks or sorels or something, but get as many layers as you can. And then just, if you're out for 15 minutes, maybe get back in your car and warm your feet up, but because feet and fingers are the hard part. But yeah, this is interesting. I think Sax-Zim is one of the most accessible birding spots in the country.
Interesting take.
Yeah. I mean, and you guys experience this. A lot of the birding is by the road or feeders along the road or at the Welcome Center. And, you don't have to get out of your car even if you didn't want to. And then the boardwalks, yes, if you're going to walk the boardwalks, it's a little less accessible, but in the summer, those are wheelchair ADA compliant, the boardwalks. So it's a very accessible birding location for folks. And that's something we don't often highlight as much as we should. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I believe there was a very notable birder that showed up without the right attire on, who then wrote a book about something, including the bog, if you know what I'm talking about.
Ariane, yes, Ariane Dwarchus, who set the world big year record. That was a blast. I'd never heard of him before. He was a Dutch birder, and he'd already set the record, but I believe when he came to Sax-Zim, it was his only stop in the Boreal forest of the whole year. And we went out, and he didn't have the right clothes, obviously. I think he came directly from the Everglades or something. And so I loaned him my coat, and we ended up with 18 species for his year, something like that. But what's funny about that day is he kept yelling. We're driving around, it's just 10 below zero or something like that, and roads are ice covered and snow covered, and he kept yelling, "Great gray, great gray," and I'd slam on the brakes because he needed it for his year. He'd seen him in Sweden, but I kept slamming the brakes and sliding, and it would be a shrike because they call the shrike in Europe great gray shrike.
Oh,
like, you gotta stop doing that.
That's funny.
Yeah.
My favorite part
let's
of the
talk about. Oh, go
Oh,
ahead, Ryan.
before we move on, my favorite part of the Aryan thing is because he did put a section in the book about it, and he described you in a way that I wouldn't really describe you. It was like he was a giant man with a huge beard with icicles hanging down it. Like this picture of you is that you're like a 6'8" Swedish guy who is like a Viking from the Norse.
Yeah. I think because my coat is so big, I think that's the only thing you remember.
I just thought
Yeah.
that was hilarious. Like sometimes you hear description of people and you're like, "Yep, that's them." And then that one I was like, "That does not sound right. I don't know if he has the right guy."
Yes, I'm 5'9.5".
Let's talk about Stickney Road. What's going
Oh
on with
no.
that?
So if people, yes, that's another thing to think about on your trip is not everybody loves the birders. There is a big red circle with a line through it on the north end of Stickney Road. There's a gentleman up there who doesn't always care for birders driving slow or stopping near his place. And so, you can avoid that road or you can just keep driving and don't stop. He's been less active, I'll say, in the last few years, which is good. Um, but I've had a few run-ins with him, and I've had long talks with him. He loves birds, and but he has some issues left over from his time in the service and military. So we just, better to just avoid those spots. Yeah, and that kind of ties in with the etiquette thing up there. When you're up there, you're in people's backyard, basically. It's not a park, it's not a reserve at all. And so, like we said, when you're driving down the road, move over and stop for anybody who's coming up behind you faster. They're probably not a birder, and um, don't put your binoculars at a farm or a house, or take pictures of a feeder in front of a house. That's kind of common sense, right? But people would never do that in the city. But out here, they think they're in the middle of nowhere. But some people don't like that. And it's just basic stuff. Stay off the road. If you saw the Boreal owl along County Road 7, that's a 55-mile-an-hour road. Just park outside the white lines and stay outside the white lines. Don't leave your doors open in the middle of the road, your car running. Get over the edge, get out, stand on the edge of the road. The sheriff will be making more trips this winter. And if people have issues with locals, or locals have problems with birders, right? We know it's 1% of the birders and 1% of the locals that cause all the problem. I say call the sheriff. I can't do anything. You can't call me. I can't do
It's like
anything.
that's above my pay grade.
Mark, I need you to beat someone up for me.
Get my badge. But if we can all do that and think about common sense, and that we're in somebody's backyard, we're really guests in their backyard, and that's going to help a lot for sure.
Yeah, and last time so we were supposed to go up, I think it was either early this year or last year, and we had like kind of a trip planned, and we had just the worst circumstances where it was supposed to be like freezing rain and then drop into like super negative temperatures, and then there was a triple homicide at the hotel we were supposed to stay at. So all those things together, I was like, we're gonna call it.
The doomed
I
trip.
don't think we should go. So would you suggest people kind of tentatively plan their trips and see how the weather is going to be before they go? Because I feel like it's hard to kind of just, if you're flying in, pick a date and then be sure that the conditions are going to be optimal. It's a
Yeah,
little tough to plan. What would you
yeah.
recommend for that?
I tell people just the opposite. I tell them just book it and deal with it. Although obviously weather is a wild card, you can never predict. If you're driving up, absolutely look at the weather first, and plan your trip accordingly, because it's going to be good from mid-December to mid-March, no matter when you come. And I don't have a crystal ball. Well, mine isn't working right now. As far as I know, there aren't any functioning ones. So just come. The one thing I will say, and maybe we're going to get to it, is for things like Bohemian waxwing, Boreal owl, it's maybe better to come a little later in the winter, after mid-January. Um, should we talk about Boreal owls right now?
I think that that's what we need to talk about right now. Yeah. Probably the most desirable owl species to get in the Midwest for most birders.
Yeah, yes. And I saw Ryan and Derek. We were at in Texas in the Valley a few weeks ago. We were there for the festival, and not only them, but many people had already heard about the boreal owls that were being banded up in Duluth and over at Whitefish Point in the UP of Michigan. I think in one night, Duluth and different banding stations in the area had about 30 boreal owls. In the UP, I think 50. So I don't know what the final totals were, but obviously they're moving. And we can plan on, about every 4 to 8 years. It's almost like clockwork that they'll move. But the thing is, we got to remember, they're very different than great grays and hawk owls, which are diurnal hunters. Boreal owls are nocturnal. And so they might be here right now. There probably are right now. There's probably one in my woods right out here.
There's one in my house. The call's coming from inside the house.
Yeah, I used to be able to imitate the sound. No, I can't do it. But
it looked like you were looking around your house though, just to make sure there wasn't one in there. Like first report of the year, it is here.
So yeah, they're going to be hunting at night until the snow gets deeper, and then maybe the voles get less, and then they start showing up at people's feeders, and then they start hunting in the daytime as they get hungrier and hungrier. So yeah, see, there's eruptions. It's like for birders and photographers, we're like, woohoo! But sometimes I think, well, for the birds, they'd rather be at home, eating and feasting and fat and happy where they are come from, right? But for the most part, there's so many voles in northern Minnesota that hunting is not the issue. But they really probably won't start popping out till mid-January or later. Just my little pro tip on boreal owls. If you're going to plan a trip, I'd say February. Who knows?
And remember, there's no guarantee. Just because there's a boreal owl potential eruption in the works does not mean there's a guarantee that the boreal owls will be findable there.
Yeah, don't ask for a refund at the Welcome Center.
Even if there's not a boreal owl, there's a lot of other cool stuff. It seems like people usually can snag at least one of the cool things up there. So, people go be like, well, I didn't get hawk owl, but I got great gray, or I didn't get great gray, but I got hawk owl. So,
what about weekend versus weekday? Are the weekends crazier with people?
Yeah. I mean, it's busy. Fortunately, the roads most people are on are lightly traveled. And I tell people two things. I say, come expecting to see nothing, because then you're going to be happy no matter what. And you're going to, like Ryan just said, you're going to see stuff that's really cool no matter what. You may not get everything on your list, unlike you guys, but you're going to see cool stuff. And number two is just explore. Just, don't depend on Telegram app. By the way, we don't run the Telegram app. I don't know how to get on the Telegram app. That's not us. That gives up to minute sightings, I guess, but that's not us. Is just explore. Just get out early. Definitely get out half hour before sunrise and stay out a half hour after sunset. That's, I think, kind of important if you want to see great grays, especially. And just wander around, just check it out. There has been a lot of great grays seen outside the bog, so I think there's a great gray eruption going on too. But right now they're kind of around, there's been a couple around Duluth and Superior National Forest and showing up in odd places, which means they're coming from Canada probably, or far northern Minnesota. So, yeah.
Interesting. What about the summer? Because I know you guys have Connecticut warblers. People come out to see those, but I've also heard the bugs are insufferable. What's the deal with summer? Would you recommend it or no?
Oh yeah, I mean, we only get maybe 10 to 15% of our visitors in the summer, and for birders, it's the hardcore, warbler people primarily. Connecticut is number one by far. But we have 20 species of warblers that breed in the bog during the peak of mosquito and tick season. And they're way back in. You can bushwhack in. You can play a tape. We tend. Connecticut's are tough because we don't, we tell people generally where to look, but you can see on eBird where they are. But we discourage people from playing a lot of tapes for Connecticut's because there's only a few spots along the road where you can get them. All the other warblers, there's so many of them, it's no problem. But I think one of the most fun things to do is just hearing a Connecticut even if it's like, it sounds like it's a quarter mile off the road, and then putting on your rubber boots and going in, putting on your head net, because they're not going to move much. They sing from a perch and they sit there. They just plop down and sing. And so going in and then just slowly moving in and finally getting close enough to get a shot or get a good view of it. I think that's very rewarding. So bring your rubber boots and your bug dope and your head net if you come in the summer for sure, and long sleeves. I'd say Connecticut's arrive in like after the 20th of May. They're late. And there's other things people want to see: mourning warbler, especially Cape May, golden winged warbler. I'm starting a movement to make the golden winged warbler the new state bird of Minnesota. Over
That'd be cool.
50% of the world's population nests in Minnesota. But I think it's going
mean,
to be,
I feel like loon is one of the better state birds, though. That's
yeah,
tough.
that's why it'll be an uphill battle.
You got to make it two state birds. Look, those are our state birds.
Water bird and bird.
Perfect.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to do that, I think.
And then, LeConte sparrow is a big one. Sedren, black-billed cuckoo, yellow-bellied flycatcher. Those are some of the summer birds I think people like to see. And great grays are there year-round. That's another thing I should mention is great grays nest there. And we have no idea how many, but I would say at least a dozen pairs nest in the bog. So if you want to get up and get out at 4 a.m., you have a shot, especially in late May and June.
That doesn't sound as inviting as going out in the winter during the regular part of the day.
Yeah, it's well, and that's part of the adventure, right? I survived the Sax-Zim Bog in 20 below zero. So
I was gonna say that I do feel like the cold is kind of part of the experience. Like if you were to go up to the bog and for some reason it was like 40 degrees in February when you went, I don't think it would feel correct. So it's
Yeah.
part of the experience to know that you could go up there in sub-zero temperatures. But I remember being cold but not really caring because the birds were so good. So it was like, yeah, I don't really feel my feet right now, but there's another pine grove's beak, so we should probably stop and take a look at that.
Oh, and if you hang out at the Welcome Center, I mean that's the case. There's just so many smiles on people's faces, and yeah, they're not, they're not thinking about the cold. They're thinking about what they just saw. So, um, and for photographers, you don't need a blind or anything like that, as you guys experienced. It's the birds are a lot of the boreal birds are very tolerant of humans. So just bring your big lens and enjoy. Yeah.
I remember another place that was cool there was Mary Lou's feeders. She has there were so many pine grosbeaks and evening grosbeaks there, and she keeps them well stocked too.
Yeah, and Mary Lou's the only one that feeds year round. There's so many
Oh,
black bears that most of us, we starting in April, we take them down because of the black bears. But Mary Lou keeps them up year round. Definitely worth a trip there and meeting her if you can. But she has a ton of feeders, and so that's another nice thing about summer is Mary Lou's, and we have now 4 boardwalks. I think when you guys were there, there was 1, and now there's 4. So there's a lot of hiking you can do. We've built new hiking trails, and I think we probably have over like 5 miles of trails now, or something like that, or 6 miles. So if you want to put in the effort and deal with the bugs, summer can be good. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your channel, Sparky, because you're like us, somebody that has a birding YouTube channel, and you've gone to a lot of the same cool places that we have.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about like how you got started with it and some of the favorite videos that you've made.
Yeah, and I just started putting videos up quite a while ago now. Uh, at least 10 years ago, 11 years ago, something like that. But
Yeah, I was gonna say you were definitely around when we started, so one of the originals.
yeah, and then COVID happened, right? And you know, some good things came out of COVID. And for us, for the organization, my channel is just my name, Sparky Stensaas. And I said it the way everybody says it. It's Stensos.
nice.
Don't let the people tell you how to do it, Sparky. It's your name. Take ownership.
Yeah, totally. Jeez. So the during COVID, we had we've been doing all these field trips, Warbler Wednesdays, and things that go buzz, croak, hoot, and night in the or at bump in the night, and all these field trips, and we couldn't do them anymore. So we started to do virtual field trips, right? And did just taking people around the bog in every single season. Started out with 15 in the first year, and since then we've done 10 a year, and this is the fifth year now. I'm just about to release episode 49. And then I have about 100 other videos like you guys do, kind of bringing people along. And this is what I love your channel too. You're bringing people along on these trips. And not everybody can travel as much as we can. And just showing the birds and sharing the natural history of these critters, right? And as you know from your fans, people, that really resonates with people. It's not we're not how-to channels, but we're experiential channels, and just showing people how amazing it is out there, and maybe inspiring people to get involved with conservation organizations or get out birding themselves.
Yeah, very cool. I remember one that I thought was very interesting was I think it was Churchill, I believe you went to. That's a spot that we heard about later as like a crazy place in Canada to go see stuff. So it's cool that you got up there for sure. Is there a place you visited that you were like, that was my best favorite trip that I went?
I love Churchill, Manitoba. Although the birders don't go there anymore because they went when the Ross's gulls were there nesting there, right? They were nesting there for like 20 years, and now they don't. They've gone back to Siberia. But one of my favorites is going with my buddy Ryan out to the central North Dakota and doing the floating blind thing.
The
We
float
built these,
the
yeah,
famous floating blind.
yes. I tell you, because it's not your typical experience. But with these floating blinds, and you got camo netting over you, you put on waders and wade out into these, one of the thousands of shallow marshes out there. There's WMAs where you can just bring these things out. You don't have to ask permission. And getting close to these birds like western grebes and redneck grebes and eared grebes and all kinds of ducks and bitterns and egrets, and they don't even know you're there, right? I think that's what I like about it is these birds don't even know you're there, and you can go up and look down into a nest even, and it's yes, the photos are cool because you're taking them at eye level, but it's just being surrounded by these birds, and it's like you're just another big old bird or a muskrat house or something. I've had terns landing on top thinking it's just a perch, and
It is to some degree.
it is.
Yeah.
Any perch in a storm. So
that sounds very cool. What is your biggest photography tip for birders?
I keep my camera in the car all the time. Like, I never take it out.
The cold and the heat's not bad for it. It's fine.
Yeah, people make too big a deal out of that.
That's good to know. It makes me feel less guilty for constantly leaving mine in the car because I'm like, oh, I should probably take it out of there.
Maybe when you're at a hotel in a city, yeah, take it out. But when you're out and about birding, I just kind of always have it in my car because you never know what you're going to run into. But for the bog, I mean, specifically, yeah, of course, bring the longest lens you need, but you don't always need a $20,000 600 f4. You don't, and you're not going to be, you're not going to need a blind. The birds are really tame up there. You can bring your own perches at any feeder setup that Friends of Sax-Zim Bog runs. You can bring your own sticks and stick them in the snow, and if you want the birds to land there, go for it. Just maybe take it with you when you're done or whatever. But I think it's a really good place for bird photography because the birds are so trusting and relatively tame. And you'll see that in my videos. I'm just out there, I'm not setting up a blind or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that's what struck me as interesting was the great gray owls kind of like fly to you sometimes. I remember there was one time it was pre-dawn. We were just out there watching this great gray kind of hunting in the distance, and it just swooped right into a tree right next to us, like right next to the road. And this great gray owl was just sitting there, and we were like, I guess that's what happens here. I guess that's what this is.
Well, didn't you have a hawk owl fly towards you too?
We did, yeah. There's that video. It comes like right at us,
Yeah.
and, like hits the car and then lands on this short post. There's just no other place in the Midwest, especially where you can even get this stuff because it's so hidden on eBird now. You know, if a great gray owl comes in Wisconsin, we probably wouldn't even know about it. So
You're
it's the
probably here right
place.
now. It's the same as
Yeah,
the
probably.
Boreal owl.
It probably
Yeah,
is, honestly.
yeah. That's, I mean, there's certain birds I question why they're hidden on eBird, but I get it. I do get it. But great grays and hawk owls especially are about as tolerant as any species out there. And if we find well, that's the other thing I was going to say. It's like Yellowstone. If you're coming up for the first time, um, get the birding map, check the birding report, check eBird. But if you see some cars pulled over, you might as well stop and see what they're looking at because it's like Yellowstone. They've probably got something.
Yep,
So
yep. Yeah, I remember that was the case for the Boreal owl. I think we knew it was. Did we know it was there, Derek? That was a Boreal owl people were
We knew
looking at, or
people
did we?
were reporting it, and with that many cars around, we thought that's probably what.
Yeah, there was just probably like, what do you think, 50 people all on the side of the road, and we're like, oh, we see lenses
Maybe
out.
less than that.
You think less than that? Well, we saw lenses out, and we were like, that's a good sign. Let's go. So yeah, that's definitely a good indicator.
have you guys ever been to? I mean, have you ever been to any place, any birding location that's anything comparable? Like I've tried to rack my brain for years about just a giant piece of public land where people are just birding along the road, you know, um, and where it's
I would
concentrated.
say not with that scale. You know, you can get some places where it's a mini version of that. You know, you'll see someone pulled over and you're like, oh,
Or
they're
the
looking at something.
or kind of like those wildlife loops. I guess kind of like a Horicon. A Horicon's pretty drivable. We can
Sort
drive
of,
around and
yeah. But
stop, but
I feel like there's parts of Sax-Zim that make it special for sure. We definitely think it's one of the like must visit destinations in the US for birding because it's unique. You know, there's not many places you go winter birding in the country, really. It's usually go south,
Yeah.
so it's different.
And I tell people these aren't rare birds. These are rarely seen birds, right? There's a
Yeah,
big difference. The
which
boreal
is
forest
cool.
goes around the globe. So,
There's just a
also,
mystique.
yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Very cool destination. Top five in the US for sure. Um, Snowy Owl last year.
Uh,
Tragic ending. People thought it got
yeah.
hit by a train.
Yeah, it did get my train. I mean, several people saw it. And that's one of the things with these birds that come from elsewhere. During the great gray eruption or snowy owl eruption, last year we had this beautiful male snowy. I mean, just but he was hunting along the road, right on 7, where I think you guys had the boreal owl, and he was further down. But they're just oblivious to cars. They don't know what a car is. They don't know what a train is. But he was perching even on the road signs and just hunting voles right on the edge of the road. And there was people, of course, when that happens, when it got hit by a train, it was sitting on the railroad tracks, and the train was coming, and you'd think, right, fly away, and it didn't. It's kind of mysterious, but it was not photographers pushing it, or this bird just was hunting in this area by the roads and these railroad tracks, and it was just a really unfortunate accident. But it happens, and great grays get hit by cars because they don't know what a car is, and they glide down to get a vole, and that's where they're hunting in the winters along the road shoulders. It doesn't happen, very often at all. Somehow hawk owls never get hit by cars ever. I mean,
Hmm.
it is. I don't know. I don't know why, but they just never do. I was going to say, to put this in perspective, we have our Christmas bird count coming up. During that eruption of 0405, the great owl eruption, on our Christmas bird count, we had 70 great grays, 70
Wow.
in the 15-mile diameter circle in a half a day, because we quit at 1 p.m. and go have lunch at the Wilbert. And there was about 10 people counting. That's it. And then we had 42 hawk owls in that
Whoa.
same
Wow.
morning.
That's fantastic.
So, 112 owls. I think we had a barred and something else too, but just in one morning. And that was the perfect storm, that eruption, and it probably will never happen again. But there were like no voles in Canada, and they had a really cold, wet summer, and so the voles didn't reproduce, and so there was almost zero up there in a big area, and they just flooded into the state. And they estimate there was about 5,000 great grays in Minnesota at the peak, and that's total estimate. That's but so that we probably won't see anything like that again. But we don't, and it was funny because I was guiding then. And it was like the easiest winter of guiding ever.
You're like, what'd you hire me for? There's 70 of these things out here.
Well, and
I'm picturing you like, and no one really knows where to find them except me. So,
and the funny thing is, nine is the magic number. So the first great gray, oh, stop. Same thing, 9 owls. And then after 9, they're like, let's find one on a better perch. That one's
oh, that's disgusting.
Start to get picky about your great gray owl side.
My record was 116 great grays in one day. Seeing 115 different.
That seems comical. That doesn't even seem.
That reminds me of like when they talk about the passenger pigeon flocks. Like they would go over your house for 4 hours or something. That's how that feels. Like that feels like a story from hundreds of years ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, and there were some guides who went out and saw over 200 in a day. But yeah, maybe the next generation will be like, whatever, Grandpa. It's like, right. But yeah, kind of fun. I also wanted to say I did discover a new species to science, and
really,
this was in my dream like 10 years ago. But
you were gonna say it was some sort of insect or something.
No, it was during a snowy owl eruption many years ago, and I vividly remember it. I discovered this pygmy snowy owl. He was only that big. Wouldn't that be the most adorable little thing? And I woke up and I'm like, it was so real. I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta go see a pygmy snowy owl. And then
Sounds like some crossbreeding people have done, like they do with dog breeds, like making them smaller.
That's definitely right in the heart of AI stuff right there.
Oh,
try to make things people love. Like, oh, it's
yeah. Have you heard they're trying to bring back the woolly mammoth? They're actually working on that.
They've been
doing that for years. I feel like ever since I was a kid, they're like, yeah, we're gonna do it. It's almost on the horizon.
Coming soon at Sax-Zim Bog.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where the good place to put it would be Sax-Zim Bog.
Oh, they probably just demolish those feeders if we put out like peanuts. I don't know if they eat peanuts. I guess
You're like, ever since the mammoth started competing with the sharp-tailed grouse, we just haven't seen any of them.
The great grays don't know what a mammoth is. They just land on them and pick stuff from their fur.
What an interesting habitat we'd be creating.
So, Sparky, in addition to like Mary Lou's and the visitor center, are there any must-visit stops in Sax-Zim? So, if you were making a birder's guide to Sax-Zim, where should people go besides kind of those two places? Yeah. I know McDavitt Road is normally a good one.
Yeah. And our birding map is color-coded by which roads are best in winter, all year round, and summer. So people can get that on the website or pick one up at the Welcome Center. But typical birders day, I would recommend, get up there a half hour before sunrise. It's hard. It's not that hard in winter. Just get up there and start driving the roads for great grays or grouse. Rough grouse is a good bird for a lot of people. And you're going to see them before the goshawks wake up and after the goshawks go to bed. So dawn and dusk. And then start hitting the feeders. Admiral Road feeder is a must. There's two, I don't know if you knew this, there's 2 feeding stations on Admiral Road now. And you could get martin at either one and then make the loop to McDavitt. I'm a McDavitt guy. And look for gray grays. And then we have a new feeding station that is just launching this winter. You have to walk in 1,200 feet into the bog. And we'll see what that brings in. But it gets people off the road, right? And a little less congestion and see what you can see. Then go down to Sax Road, maybe back to 7. Stone Lake Road. I'm sure you did Stone Lake Road. Great for northern shrike. Sometimes hawk owl, great gray. There's sometimes mink. There's a little open water usually there. and red poles like crazy. And then go over to Mary Lou's. Then get to the Welcome Center sometime in the middle of the day. Welcome Center is open 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. every single day in winter. Stop in, have some coffee or cocoa, watch a few of my videos. They're always playing. Maybe we have Friday afternoon programs at noon. Friday at noon, there's a speaker every Friday. And then, check the feeders there for ermine or evening grosbeaks. And then go back out in the afternoon and do the owl thing again. Maybe run through Meadowlands, the town of Meadowlands, because there's a lot of fruit trees there. And if you're going to find Bohemian waxwing, that would be a good place to look. There's a lot of fruit trees there. So you guys spent how many days there?
I think it was kind of like 1.5. It was really just one day in the bog. So here's what we actually did. We drove up really late at night / early in the morning, got there before sunrise, birded the entire day. And that was really the only day we were in the bog for. So we got all that stuff in one day. And then the next day we woke up early and went up to Isabella. So we really only spent one day and somehow got everything, which was crazy. Like, I don't think anybody's going to understand besides maybe you how lucky we were that day.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. And then, I tell people, if they're flying in especially, I say, plan for 3 full days in the bog. One is too short, except for pros. But plan for 3 full days. I think that's your best bet. Of course, if you're coming from Minneapolis, you can do it in a day because you can come back in a few weeks. But I think 3 full days, you can see the whole bog and you have a really good shot at everything that's around. So, and when we say not everything is there every winter, there's probably going to be a few pine grosbeaks, even though we don't get one on the Christmas bird count, there's going to be a few. So even though there's not a lot of one species, you still have a chance to get it. And think about hiring a guide for one day, because there's 6 or 7 listed on our website. And these guys are awesome and they make their living doing this. And it's a great way to support the bog through supporting them. They're not associated with Friends of Sax-Zim Bog at all, but they do a great job. And that, then we don't have to either. There is no more festival, by the way. People ask that went away with COVID, and the town of Meadowlands was the one putting it on. So they were the ones running it. We were helping with the field trips and speakers, but they kind of aged out of it too. Nobody really wants to take it on anymore. Yeah, so I forgot what I was going to say next, but yeah.
I'm not sure if I ever knew there was a festival. That's interesting. But I guess don't go to the festival then. It doesn't exist.
It was always President's Day weekend, and it was always 25 below zero.
Oh.
And always at least one bus wouldn't start. And people in their little, the bag you get when you get there. Everything was limited to 125 people, and they were all jammed into the community center in Meadowlands, and which is pretty small. But in their little bags, they'd get an ice scraper, and people go, "Oh, that's nice! It's a Sax-Zim Bog ice scraper." And then when they get on the bus in the morning, they figured out what it was for, because all those school bus windows would frost up instantly with people inside breathing. And so the whole trip, people are scraping the inside of their windows, trying to keep them clear.
Sparky, you're not really selling it for me.
Well, the festival's gone.
I don't think I would go if it was still going.
That's why it's toast now.
It was one of those crazy experiences. About the opposite of the Lower Rio Grande Festival. But maybe it'll come back. So,
yeah.
We eagerly await its re-arrival.
Anything else you want to add about birding at Sax-Zim or the channel or anything like that? New projects you guys have going on?
Well, we have the Birdathon, World's Coldest Birdathon, coming up here first weekend January, or first Friday, Saturday of January. And the playing field is not just Sax-Zim Bog, it's all of Northeast Minnesota all of Northwest Wisconsin. We keep trying to get some Wisconsin teams.
Hmm.
And it's you can either do the 1 day or 2 day, and there's a lot of strategy because the birds are worth different points. So like a goshawk is worth 3, great gray is worth 3, something like a hoary red. Well, I can't do that. But they all have different values, 1 to 5 points.
It's 3 right here where it counts.
Wait. But the big thing is, and we have this tiny bird art online auction. You can create a tiny piece of bird art, 6x6, 5x7, or smaller, and then we auction it off in late January. It's the week between the last playoff game and the Super Bowl. Okay, so the conference championships and the Super Bowl. It's that weekend, and we auction everything off, and that's a big fundraiser. But like I said, we're a land preservation organization. Our biggest programs are the owls and the Acres for Owls Land Fund, which is trying to purchase land for our owls and warblers critical corridor project. Because as you guys know, a lot of these species need big tracts of land. And so we're trying to string these tracts together and buying up land. So we're a lean and mean organization. There's only 3 of us full-time year-round. And then we have these wonderful naturalists at the Welcome Center during the winter and summer. But that's where a lot of our money goes, is just straight into buying up bird habitat. So saxzim.org, and subscribe to Badgerland Birding. Be the best thing you ever do. I mean, you guys are so regular and putting out interesting topics. You've mastered the thumbnail. You've mastered the titles. All extremely interesting. And then when you're done with that, you can go over to Sparky Stensaas at Hotmail Sparky Stensaas at YouTube. And
we got to make a playlist with just like, one of ours, one of Sparky's, one of ours.
And we keep talking about getting together, and we will.
We have to. We got to get the collaborations going. Yeah, if not for the triple homicide last year, I think we would have done it.
Yeah, that was the ceiling factor.
That's not on the website, by the way. That's not.
What is I don't know if you know, but what's the status of gray partridge in Minnesota? Can you still find those?
Oh, heck yeah. Do you need it still?
Yeah. Yes. So when we started birding, there were some reported up in Kewaunee, Wisconsin. And so we were like, we had a list of things we wanted to see. And this was when we didn't really know anything. We were just trying to go out and see birds. And it was like, we could go this way and look for Eurasian collared dove. We could go up and look for gray partridge. We decided to look for the collared doves. And then I think after that year, there was like no reliable gray partridge sighting in the state.
Ever again.
And yet the collared doves are everywhere. Right?
The collared doves persist. I don't even think we saw them.
That day. Yeah.
Hey, I drove 10 hours round trip in Minnesota to see a house finch back in 1987. So I get it. But yeah, I would, maybe we could meet out there. I mean, sure. Northwest Minnesota in winter, one of the most brutal places on the continent, but is the best place to see gray partridge. I think it's the easiest. There, and I can share some locations, but you basically just got to put in your miles between. Well, there's some towns of it I can share with you, but Glacial Ridge National Wildlife Refuge. From there, kind of to the south, just drive back roads and farm. They'll be in the shelter belts, and they come out and feed during the day, even when it's 25, 30 below zero, 50 below wind chill, they're still out. But you'll get them. Yeah, but you'd have to put a lot of miles on. I mean, and that's a long ways from you guys, because it's like 4.5 hours from me. So
yeah. We did that in Wisconsin, like going driving to try to find them, and there was just nothing. Yeah, it was terrible.
Well, I don't know how flexible you are, but I'll probably be heading out there in late January or February sometime. And but I know that's a major trip. But
we'll just go to the bog and then go there after.
Is that a lifer? Would that be a lifer?
It would actually, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Are they out there in the summer or just the winter?
No, they're there in the summer, but they're
much harder to find.
And they be in cultivated fields in the summer, like a soybean field, or so early summer is is a possibility when the crops are only that high.
Mm,
Um, there, yeah. Oh, I have a closer place we could meet.
a secret
Uh,
spot.
we're a shorter, yeah, and that's nothing for you. It's more exciting for me. But there's a spot in southeast Minnesota where there's short-eared owls, and I've had gray partridge right around there too. That would be much closer for you guys.
Southeast
Sounds
gets me
much more
interested.
appealing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's we can chat about that because you can do that, drive around those roads during the day, and then look for the short-eared owls at dusk.
I will say, I feel like birding trip planning is really fun for me. When you're like, oh, we can go here and get this, and then we can go here and do this. But I'm always
Yeah.
way too ambitious. I'm like, it'll take like 10 minutes to find that. Then
That
we
is
just
your
go and get
thing.
this. So then we
Yeah,
go
you're
get
like,
this
once
other
we
thing.
get that in 5 minutes, we'll just go to the next thing. Get that
And
in
then it's
10
like
minutes.
3 hours later and you can't let it go. You're like, no, they should be here. We're
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
find
yeah.
it.
We may have
Well,
to package a Sax-Zim Bog trip though with a gray partridge trip as well and do both in a week or
yeah.
something.
Well, I mean, isn't that what Facebook does? It makes it look like everything is so easy. But I'll tell you, the in Texas, I actually did get 3 lifers, and I thought I would get 0
Hey.
because I forgot about the parrots. Um,
Oh,
but I don't know which ones are countable. You can help me here. I got the monk parakeets finally. That's
that should
countable.
be countable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had 40 or 50 of them down at Old Hidalgo, and then yellow-headed Amazon.
I think they put that
Oh,
on the provisional list, but I don't know what state it's in. Some
Yeah, we
people
were
think,
surprised to see it was provisional or something along those lines, like trending towards being a fully
oh, okay.
countable, if not already.
'Cause I think I saw one there with
Hmm.
the red
yeah, there's
crown,
one hanging out there.
and then yellow Lord. Is that what
Red
red?
Lord.
Red Lord.
Lord? Yeah,
I think
that's
that's kind of in the same boat.
okay. All right, so I got one lifer.
In parentheses, +2.
Yeah.
We'll see. I think that's
So
how
I
that
think
works.
that puts me up to 658 or something. My wife Bridget, you can get 700, Sparky. You can get 700. But as we know, the CPB goes up and up. The cost per bird goes
Mhm.
up and up. The higher, closer you get to 700,
You
or
can't think about that.
Yeah, just grind through the money.
just 2 kids going to college here soon. That's all. But
You know what would save a lot of money is if they didn't go to college.
Hey,
I'll bring
can't
that up.
do it. I needed a Southern lapwing,
Look
so
at
that's too bad.
700.
Well, and I think your channel, my channel, shows that you don't always have to go far from home to have crazy adventures. So
That's
that
true.
the chases are fun, and the targets. It's like that makes it fun. But
Yeah, I think
yeah,
the master of not spending money is Ken Kaufman with his big year that he did hitchhiking and
Just walk and hitchhike. That's
yeah.
fine.
eating
It'd
cat
be
food.
much different to do now. I can't wholesomely recommend anyone do that.
It would be like he got 59 birds and then vanished.
That's possible.
I think he did it on $1,000, and I think half of that he spent on his trip to Alaska, and during
Uh,
that year, and he ate a lot of cat food. I think it was cat food or dog food, cat food. I think. Yeah, and
and
hit.
he would work up in the orchards too, like in California.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was fun talking to him again at the festival in Texas there, and I would highly recommend his book, "The Birds That Audubon Missed," to anybody. I'm well into it now, and awesome book. And I think it gives a more rounded, holistic picture to Audubon. It doesn't villainize him, and it doesn't make him sound like the greatest person on earth either. But I think it's a really good look at early ornithology in America. Plus, aside from Ken's amazing artistic efforts in recreating those Audubon style paintings that the birds that he missed, yeah, it's highly recommended. Yeah.
We have a cool story about that because we were at Biggest Week when the book was released. And so Kim, Ken's wife got him a cake that had the book on it.
Oh, really?
So they surprised him with it. Happy book release. So then someone in the crowd just yelled, "It's a lifer."
It was like the dorkiest, most birding community moment when somebody yelled, "It's a lifer."
But it was cool to see him, surprised with his cake and everything.
Yeah, I saw him at the Butterfly Center too, because he's really, of course, into butterflies. And I said, I gotta ask you, Ken, because in the back of his book, in the index, there's a skipper called the redundant skipper, and on the in the index, it's listing all the skippers in alphabetical order, and then it gets to redundant, and then right below redundant, it says redundant again. And I said, "Was this a joke? This has got to be a joke." He smiled and nodded.
That's hilarious. That's a good one.
He
But
probably like wrote in, somebody finally found the redundant skipper in my book.
It's an Easter egg.
do you remember that? You heard recently, or like in the last year, that guy who got what's his name? I know him.
Peter
I don't know
Kaestner?
the yes, Peter Kaestner. Yeah, the 10,000 birds. Yes. Um, he was on a field trip to Sax-Zim in 1988. It was the ABA convention, and I was leading a busload. I was guiding that day, and the only bird he needed, he was at 6,700 something at that time in 1988, and he needed sharp-tailed grouse. He didn't have sharp-tailed grouse yet, and so in this bus full of 40 people, big Greyhound style bus, and driving Sax-Zim. And all of a sudden, a sharp-tailed grouse hen just starts running across this field, and I yelled, "Sharp-tailed grouse!" And it right just then it, right into the woods. He missed it, and so I am the person who didn't get Peter Kestner his sharp-tailed grouse, but he was the nicest guy. He's like, "Oh, whatever, yeah." But just kind of a funny story. I mean, that accomplishment is almost unbelievable. I put it up there with Ariane's, 7,000 some birds in one year.
Think about the
10,000.
cost per bird there. I mean, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, pretty exciting. But where are you guys going next?
Possibly Florida. We'll see. But that'd be cool.
Possibly Sax-Zim Bog.
So what would bring you up here? Boreal owls or what?
I mean, the chance to see Boreal owl again, the chance to see a lot of that stuff just again, because I don't think I've seen a great gray or a northern hawk owl since we were there last.
And
So
we're always collecting media and stuff too. So
Oh,
just to
Derek,
get
you have
like
yeah,
get
you have
more
a
videos of things.
Derek's an OM guy now.
yeah. He's got a nice setup.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's very nice. It's been fun.
yeah.
And we met Peter at Biggest Week too, and he was a super nice dude. So hopefully we'll have him on the podcast
Oh,
at some time.
yeah.
We can talk to him. Remember that time Sparky didn't get you the sharp-tailed grouse?
I would love to ask him about that. So do you think biggest year? Do you think biggest week? Do you think that'd be I've never gone. I mean, and I was right next to their booth, right at Rio Grande, but everybody was saying, "Oh, there's so many people," but they kept saying, "Oh, well, there's other places to bird."
Mhm.
And I watched your video series too, but do you think it'd be worth it?
I
Yeah.
thought that the people were kind of the appeal, to be honest, because it's like
Okay.
you don't usually see that many birders all in one place. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like how the cold is to Sax-Zim Bog. The multitude of people are kind of two biggest week, just because
Yeah.
everyone's excited. That's a place where you're walking on a boardwalk and you see 20 people all gathered with their cameras and binoculars out looking at something, and you're like, "What is it?" And they're like, "It's a Cape May warbler." So it's like everything on that boardwalk gets people excited.
Yeah.
The atmosphere is cool because it is very much like go back to the convention center nightly for, XYZ different things.
Okay.
And yeah, it was a neat thing. I would recommend going to it at least once.
And on the boardwalk, you're like, oh, there's Peter Kaestner. There's Ken
Yeah,
Kaufman.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
this other birder I haven't
There's
seen in
Greg
10
Miller.
years. Yeah. And then there are places you can
Okay.
go where it's not as crowded, like Oak Openings is pretty cool. And there's different types of species like lark sparrows. We had blue grosbeak there.
Yeah.
And then we really liked this pizza place called The Stubborn Brother in Toledo. So I
Oh,
feel like I've always got to mention that because it was just a great place. What was the other? Was it Metro Marsh we went to? That was a pretty good
Um,
place, kind of away from the crowds too.
there's Metzger. We went there. And then there's Howard Marsh, which that's not really away
When
from
we
the
did the
crowds, but
accessibility trip, wasn't it Metro
oh, maybe. I didn't really remember the
something? There
name
was
of that
another
one that
place
well.
we
yeah.
went. There's a bunch of places you can go where the birding's still good, but the people aren't as crazy. So you can kind of moderate how many people you want to be around.
Right. Right.
But I think a lot of people go and they don't even register for the festival. They're just kind of like in the area too. So you have a
Okay.
mix of people in the festival and then not in, and they can kind of mix as much as they
Yeah.
desire.
Yeah, for the social thing. And maybe I should look into, is there a vendor fair there too?
Yep, very similar to Rio Grande Valley.
And that's
Well, isn't it oh yeah, yeah. But they're so optics is separate from like other
oh,
vendors. They have
okay.
the guides and authors kind of in the welcome center, and then the vendors have like their own separate place in the marsh.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I should maybe think about it. I mean, that's a busy time here too, but I'd love to do that sometime.
I feel like it's something you got to say like, yeah, I went to biggest
I
week at least
know.
once in my life.
Yeah,
No, right?
there's probably
Bring
nothing
your
down
kids with
there.
you.
Yeah, there's probably
Uh,
nothing down there you would need as like a lifebird because it's a lot of the same stuff that comes up. You know, that's like one
yeah.
of the things is there's not a lot of like crazy distinctive species down there because it's, migratory birds of the
Yeah.
eastern US pretty much, but there's cool stuff that gets sighted in the area.
Well, photos, I mean, photos and video now, like you, Derek, that's kind of I'm trying to fill in those photo gaps and video gaps. The book I'm working on is called Birds of the Northwoods. And I'm a publisher too. We publish field guides to the Northwoods and New England primarily, but I'm working on the birds one, and there's going to be a QR code on every single species, and
Hmm.
it'll go right to videos of that species. So, um, I think that'd be a cool feature. I'm like yellow rail, click it, and you can see yellow rail in the wild moving around,
Yeah.
calling. So that's what I'm working on. So I'm like a lot of the warblers. I have sucky, sucky photos and video of warblers. So there, if you get them like things like we don't get as much of the black-throated blue. Um, I don't know if they're maybe too far north for some of those southeastern ones. Like,
We had pretty good
Yeah, like
diversity,
they didn't really have cerulean down there or
but
Kentucky.
some of my
hmm,
best warbler stuff was from biggest week, like Prothonotary right at
yeah,
eye level,
Yeah,
oh
you
yeah,
can get so
Arcturians.
many Prothonotary there.
oh yeah, that would be good. Yeah, so I think that would be worth it. But they don't allow tripods on the boardwalk, right?
No, and for good reason.
Yeah, I bet now they're kicking themselves they didn't make it 12 feet wide. I mean,
Probably,
I
honestly,
don't
yeah.
know.
It should be 20 feet wide. Just biggest
really?
board wide.
Uh, but yeah, all right. Well, maybe we'll. I don't know. Are you going this? Are you going to go?
We'll
Are you
see.
guys?
We're still kind of working out what we're going to be doing this year. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us, Sparky. It always, whatever place we're talking about, I'm like, man, we got to go there. So now I'm all pumped up about boreal bird species.
Well, it's fun. Yeah. See where you guys go. I'm like, I want to go there. Yeah. It's. YouTube is nice that way. It gets you pumped up for the next adventure. So, but thank you guys so much, and we'll see you soon. I'm sure.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone for watching and listening to this episode of the Badgerland Birding Podcast.